Imagine for a moment you are unwell, a fever grips you, a persistent cough rattles your chest, or a throbbing pain emanates from deep within your head. In our modern world, a visit to the doctor is a sterile, scientific affair. Tests are run, diagnoses are made based on evidence, and treatments are prescribed with a high degree of precision and safety. But now, let's strip away those centuries of progress. Transport yourself back to the Middle Ages. The person you seek for healing might be a university-trained physician who smells of herbs and old parchment, a local barber-surgeon with hands stained by blood, and a collection of terrifying metal tools, or a wise woman in the village whose remedies are a blend of ancient folklore and practical botany. And their cure for your ailment. It might not be a pill or an injection. It might be draining a significant portion of your blood to rebalance your humors. It might be drilling a hole directly into your skull to release evil spirits. Or it might be a foul-tasting potion made from powdered mummy, animal dung, or crushed gemstones. Welcome, seekers of the strange and forgotten, to HistoryVerse X tonight. We pull back the curtain on one of history's most harrowing subjects. Prepare yourselves as we explore the world of medieval medicine, the cures that were weirder and often deadlier than the disease. To understand the often bizarre landscape of medieval medicine, we must first forget almost everything we know about modern science. The most crucial concept to discard is the germ theory of disease. In the medieval world, there was no knowledge of bacteria, viruses, or microscopic pathogens. The idea that invisible organisms could cause sickness was centuries away. Instead, illness was understood through a complex framework of spiritual belief, astrological influence, and ancient medical theory inherited from the Greeks and Romans. Spiritual causes sickness could be seen as a punishment from God for one's sins, or the direct result of demonic possession or witchcraft. Healing, therefore, was often intertwined with prayer, penance, and pilgrimage. Astrological causes, the positions of the planets and stars, were believed to have a profound influence on human health. A physician might consult an almanac and a patient's horoscope before deciding on the most auspicious time to administer a treatment or perform a surgery. Certain procedures were considered fatal if performed under the wrong celestial alignment. Humoral theory, but the dominant medical theory, the bedrock of almost all learned medicine for over 1,000 years, was humoralism. Humoral theory, first codified by the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates and later expanded upon by the Roman physician Galen, was an elegant, comprehensive, and ultimately profoundly incorrect model of human health. It posited that the human body was composed of 4 fundamental substances, or humors: blood, associated with the element of air, the season of spring, and a sanguine, optimistic, cheerful temperament; phlegm, associated with water, winter, and a phlegmatic, calm, unemotional temperament. Yellow bile, associated with fire, summer, and a choleric, angry, irritable temperament, and black bile, associated with earth, autumn, and a melancholic, sad, depressive temperament. A person was considered healthy when these four humors were in perfect balance. Sickness, therefore, was believed to be caused by an imbalance, an excess or deficiency of one or more of these humors. The entire goal of the medieval physician was not to kill a pathogen, but to restore this delicate internal equilibrium. And the methods they used to achieve this are what seems so strange and so dangerous to us today. Every diagnosis, every treatment, from your headache to the Black Death, was viewed through this lens. The physician would examine the color of your urine in a special flask called a macula, check your pulse, note your temperament, and consult the stars, all to determine which humor was out of balance, and then they would prescribe the cure. A cure that almost always involved getting something out of the body. If there was one single treatment that defined medieval medicine, it was bloodletting, also known as phlebotomy. This practice was ubiquitous, used to treat an astonishingly wide range of conditions, from fevers and infections to headaches and heartache. The logic was rooted directly in humoral theory. Blood was the most dominant humor, and many illnesses, particularly those involving fever, redness, or inflammation, were believed to be caused by an excess of hot or corrupted blood. The solution, therefore, seemed perfectly logical to them. Simply remove the excess blood. Short pause by draining a portion of the patient's blood. The physician believed they were removing the source of the illness, reducing the heat in the body, and allowing the four humors to return to a state of balance. The practice was meticulously systematized. Medical charts, known as zodiac man diagrams, showed which specific veins in the body were thought to be connected to which organs and astrological signs. A physician would consult these charts to determine the precise point from which to let the blood. A headache might require draining a vein in the forehead, while a liver ailment might call for an incision on the right arm. The time of day, the phase of the moon, and the patient's constitution were all taken into account. It was a complex, ritualized procedure. Interestingly, university-trained physicians, who considered themselves learned gentlemen, rarely performed the actual act of bloodletting themselves. It was considered a manual, and therefore lesser, form of labor. This task, along with other surgical procedures like tooth pulling and amputations, fell to the barber-surgeon. Short pause in the Middle Ages. The roles of barber and surgeon were often combined. The same person who cut your hair and shaved your beard was also the one you went to for minor surgeries. The iconic red and white striped barber pole is a direct legacy of this era, the red representing blood and the white representing the bandages. The pole itself symbolizes the staff that patients would grip to make their veins bulge for the procedure. The barber-surgeon would use a variety of tools to let blood. A lancet, a small, sharp, pointed knife, was used for venesection, the opening of a vein. For more localized treatments, leeching was common. Live leeches would be applied to the skin, where they would attach, gorge themselves on blood, and then fall off. Their saliva contains an anticoagulant, which kept the blood flowing. Another method was cupping, where a heated glass cup was placed on the skin. As the air inside cooled, it created a vacuum that drew blood to the surface. The skin would then be scored with a knife to release the pooled blood. Of course, we now know that draining blood from a sick person is often the worst possible thing to do. It weakens an already compromised immune system, can lead to shock, and in an era without sterilization, introduces a high risk of infection at the incision site. Countless patients throughout the Middle Ages likely died not from their original illness, but from the cure that was meant to save them. Perhaps no medieval medical procedure captures the imagination with such macabre fascination as trepanation. This is the ancient practice of drilling, cutting, or scraping a hole into the human skull. While its origins are prehistoric, trepanation was still practiced in the Middle Ages, though its purpose and frequency are subjects of historical debate. Why on earth would anyone drill a hole in someone's head? One of the primary reasons was to treat head injuries, particularly skull fractures. A surgeon might trepan the skull to relieve pressure on the brain caused by swelling or internal bleeding, or to remove bone fragments. In this specific context, the procedure, however risky, might have occasionally been life-saving, even if based on a rudimentary understanding of cranial pressure. But trepanation was also used for conditions with no obvious physical cause. It was believed that ailments like severe epilepsy, chronic migraines, and various forms of madness or erratic behavior could be caused by evil spirits or bad vapors trapped inside the skull. Drilling a hole in the head, therefore, was seen as a way to create an exit, a doorway through which these malevolent forces could escape, thereby curing the patient. The procedure was performed with tools like saws, drills, and scrapers, all without effective anesthesia. The patient would have been held down, perhaps given large amounts of alcohol or an opium-based tincture to dull the pain, but the experience would have been excruciating and terrifying. Incredibly, archaeological evidence from unearthed skulls shows that a surprising number of patients actually survived the procedure, as evidenced by bone regrowth around the edges of the hole. But the long-term consequences and the ever-present risk of infection, brain damage, or hemorrhage made it one of the most dangerous interventions imaginable. It represents a desperate attempt to cure the incurable, a physical solution for afflictions of the mind and spirit that were deeply misunderstood. Beyond the surgical interventions of the barber-surgeon, the medieval physician relied heavily on their pharmacopoeia, the vast collection of remedies derived from plants, animals, and minerals. At the heart of this was herbalism. Many plant-based remedies used in the Middle Ages were genuinely effective, their properties discovered through centuries of folk wisdom and monastic study. Willow bark, containing salicylic acid, the basis for aspirin, was used for pain and fever. Foxglove digitalis was used for heart conditions. Poppy extracts, opium, were powerful painkillers. Monastery gardens were often sophisticated botanical pharmacies, cultivating a wide array of medicinal herbs. However, alongside these effective remedies were countless others based on less scientific principles. The doctrine of signatures was a popular belief that a plant's appearance hinted at its medicinal use. A plant with a heart-shaped leaf might be used for heart ailments. A plant with yellow flowers, like celandine, might be used to treat jaundice. It was a philosophy of like cures like, based on divine symbolism rather than chemical properties. One of the most famous and sought-after remedies of the era was theriac. This was not a single substance, but a complex, polypharmaceutical concoction, an ancient cure-all inherited from Roman times. A true theriac could contain dozens, sometimes over 100, different ingredients, including opium, viper's flesh, cinnamon, myrrh, and a host of other rare herbs and minerals. It was believed to be a universal antidote to poison, as well as a remedy for the plague and numerous other diseases. Its creation was a complex public ritual, and a small dose of this expensive compound was considered a powerful preventative medicine. But it is in the realm of animal and mineral-based medicine that we find some of the most shocking and bizarre ingredients prescribed by medieval physicians. This was a form of filth pharmacy, based on the idea that potent remedies could be derived from repulsive or exotic substances. Consider these actual medieval prescriptions: mummy powder, mumia, ground up fragments of ancient Egyptian mummies, were a highly prized and very expensive medicine, imported to Europe and sold in apothecaries. It was believed to have powerful healing properties and was prescribed for everything from bruises to stomach ailments. The demand was so high that a gruesome trade in fake mummies, made from recently deceased bodies, flourished to supply the market. Animal dung, the feces of various animals, were used in poultices and potions. The dung of a white dog, for example, was thought to be particularly effective for sore throats when dried and powdered. Pig dung was used to stop nosebleeds. Precious stones, it was believed that gemstones held powerful medicinal properties. Emeralds were thought to cure epilepsy. Sapphires were used for eye problems, and powdered pearls were taken for heart conditions. Ingesting these ground-up minerals was a cure only the very wealthy could afford. Human remains beyond mummies, other human byproducts were used. Skull moss usnea, a moss that grew on exposed human skulls, was used to treat bleeding. Human fat and blood were also used in various ointments. While we recoil in disgust, there was a logic, however flawed, behind some of these practices. The more exotic, expensive, or repulsive the ingredient, the more powerful its medicinal magic was believed to be. It was a world where a patient's cure might literally consist of swallowing a piece of a long-dead pharaoh. If internal medicine was a strange landscape, the world of medieval surgery and physical intervention was one of brute force and immense pain. Surgery anesthesia, as we know it, did not exist. Surgeons relied on alcohol, opium tinctures like laudanum, or herbal preparations to dull the senses. But these were unreliable and could not eliminate the agony of the knife. The primary goal of the surgeon was speed. An amputation had to be performed as quickly as possible, a brutal race against the patient's shock and pain. Infection was an almost universal complication. Without any concept of germs, surgical tools were not sterilized. The same knife might be used on multiple patients without being cleaned. A surgeon's robes were often stiff with the dried blood of previous operations, worn almost as a badge of experience. Surviving the surgery itself was often only the first battle. Surviving the almost inevitable post-operative infection was another matter entirely. Dentistry toothache was a common misery, and the only real solution for a decaying tooth was extraction. This was performed by barber-surgeons or itinerant tooth pullers at fairs, using fearsome-looking pliers and a great deal of force. There were no anesthetics and no gentle techniques. It was a swift, brutal, and public procedure. Childbirth for women. Childbirth was the most dangerous time of their lives. It was almost exclusively the domain of female midwives, as male physicians were typically only called in for extreme complications, often when things were already dire. Midwifery was a craft passed down through generations, relying on practical experience rather than formal medical training. While many midwives were skilled and knowledgeable, a lack of understanding about hygiene and the mechanics of childbirth meant that mortality rates for both mother and child were tragically high. Complications like a breech birth or postpartum hemorrhage were often a death sentence. Childbirth was a natural process fraught with supernatural dread and very real physical danger. The world of medieval medicine can seem to us a carnival of horrors, a world of misguided theories, painful procedures, and bizarre remedies, and yet to dismiss it entirely as ignorant superstition would be to miss the point. Within their limited framework of understanding, medieval physicians and healers were not malicious charlatans, though some certainly existed. They were genuinely trying to heal the sick, to alleviate suffering, and to make sense of the profound mysteries of the human body. They were working with the knowledge they had, building upon ancient traditions, and using observation and reason as best they could within the confines of their worldview. The careful cataloging of herbs by monks, the anatomical studies, however limited, undertaken at early universities, The very act of trying to systematize and understand disease were the first crucial steps on the long road to modern medicine. The flaws of humoral theory would eventually be exposed by the new discoveries of the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. Figures like Vesalius in anatomy, Paracelsus in chemistry, and later, Pasteur in microbiology, would dismantle the old world order, replacing it with an evidence-based, scientific approach to healing. But the medieval world serves as a powerful and humbling reminder. It reminds us of the profound impact that our core beliefs and understanding of the world have on our actions. It shows us how logical, intelligent people can arrive at profoundly wrong conclusions when their initial premises are flawed. So the next time you take a simple aspirin for a headache, you might spare a thought for your medieval ancestor, who, for the same complaint, might have had leeches applied to their temples or a hole drilled in their skull. It's a testament to how far we've come, and a fascinating, if frightening, a glimpse into the healing arts of a world long past. I hope this journey into the strange and often terrifying world of medieval medicine has given you a new appreciation for the comforts and certainties of our own time. It's a world that, thankfully, now exists only in the pages of history books and in the quiet explorations of the past. Good night, softer, and may your health be sound, and your remedies considerably less bizarre. Until next time, here on HistoryVerse X.